In this tutorial, what we're going to do is have a look how to use a few different Linux commands to continue to do better things with the file system. Specifically, the commands we're looking at today, these are taken from the week 3 Linux topic, is mkdir, mv, kup, touch, and rm just here as well, which is short for make directory, move, copy, touch means create something, and rm is short for remove. So let's have a look at what we're going to try and achieve in this task. Before you can do any of the exercises today, what you're going to need to do first of all is to run these 3 commands here. You'll need to change directory into the home folder. You'll need to do cp-r */tmp and then do a cd /temp/move it, capital I just there. In actual fact, I need to do those as well so I can do this tutorial. So let me grab my pop-up window that I've got here. I'm just going to pull this across so you can watch me doing it with you, and I'll type in my commands. Like that. Okay, so I'm ready to go. So the first of the things that we're going to attempt in here is to have a little go at doing some things with some copying. Okay, so at the moment I've got a Windows Explorer window open over on the right hand side of your screen, and I've got my terminal open over on the left. So what I'm going to do first then is have a quick ls in here just so you can see what I've got. And you'll see I've got file a.txt, that's a file, and I've got 2 directories, one called other.dir and one called secret.dir. And also mirroring that over on this side, I've got file a, secret directory, other directory. Well, as I mess around with the file system, there's always a risk that I might end up deleting something. So a good first step would be to perhaps take a copy of file A just here. If I were doing this in Windows, what I'd probably do is right click on file A, I'd perhaps go to copy, and then I'd right click again in the empty space underneath it, and I'd choose paste. So that creates me a second copy of file A, and I could then rename it. You can either right click, and there's an option towards the bottom that says rename. That's one way you can rename files in Windows, or you could click on it once, just wait a second, and then click on it once again, and that'll allow me to rename it. So I could call that something like file B instead, perhaps. So I've now got the same file twice. How do we do that on the command line? So what I'm going to do is exactly the same process. In order to make a copy, I use the copy command, so cp, and then a space. Then you tell the computer what file you'd like to copy. So I want to copy file A. You might remember from the last lesson, there's a way you can get the computer to auto-complete for you to save you having to type a few characters. So I've typed in F and I. I can see from looking at the terminal window there's no other files that start with that name. So I can tap the tab key located just above caps lock, and it'll automatically fill that in for me. Where was I? So cp copy file A space and then the name that you'd like it to have. So in this case I'd like mine to be called file B.txt and hit enter. If it worked, the next time I do an ls, I'll now see I've got 2 copies of the same file. What else could we do in here? So, and one of the other things I wanted to look at today was also the ability to remove things that you don't want. So we should probably talk about that a little bit. Also, you could actually move things into different directories instead. You could move files around. Let's just look at that for a second. So here's file A just here. Maybe what I'd like to do on Windows is to go and stow that in one of these 2 folders. I might tuck it into this other dir just here, this other directory. So in Windows, to make that movement, what I would do is I would click on here, I would hold down the mouse button, and I'll drag it, and Windows even tells me what I want to do actually, and then I can release the mouse button, and file A is now located in here. So that's pretty handy. How do we do that in the terminal? Let's have a look. So what I want to do is exactly the same process. I want to move mv. The file that I want to move is file A. Now, when I auto-completed that time, it stopped after the word file. You noticed it didn't write the full thing for me. And that's because I've got 2 things here that have both got the word file in them. So I then need to type the next part, which is A. I can auto-complete again at that point. Right, so move file A. Now I want it to go into the directory called other.dir. If you think about it, if I just typed other.dir at that point, that's probably going to be a little bit confusing for the computer. Am I saying that I'd like to pick this up and rename it and leave it where it is and call it other.dir, or do I want to move it into this directory? The way that you make it easier for the computer to understand is if you want to move something into a new directory, what you do is you use the slashes that we saw in the previous lesson. So in this case, I want to go from where I am right now, which is represented as a full stop, and then I put a slash on it like that, like this. So I could type in that command, and that would move file A into other directory. I could be extra clever actually and say, do you know what, as I move it, I'd like to rename it as well. And I'm going to call it file A2.txt instead. I could do this. So what I've just done now, if I do an ls, is you'll see that I've only got file B, and that when I change directory into the other directory that I created, and I do a list in there, you'll see now that my file's moved and been renamed at the same time. What if I wanted to move it back and put it where it was before? So that's going to be move. The file I want to move is that file called file A2, and this time where I want it to go is I want it to go back one directory level, so it's going to be sat in the move it directory. So back one is ... and I just want to move it back one. I don't want to rename it either, I'm going to leave it called what it's currently called. So let's have a look. A list, it's not there anymore. I'm going to change directory and drop back one level, and then a list, and it's been moved back. And just for good measure, if I wanted to, I could rename it back to its original name. Like that, and then call it file A.txt, like that, and what that'll do is rename it back to what it was called before. So I'm back where I started. The other two things that I want to cover while we're in here is also like very much to have a little look at the commands which we use to remove files or to delete them, as you would in Windows, and also as well to look at creating new files, which will very, very neatly tie up this tutorial. So let's have a quick look at some practical examples of that. Here I am in my Windows directory again, and just to make the two things line up, I'm just going to quickly move file A and drop it back in the move it directory. So I'm just going to drag that and pop that in there again. So if I wanted to delete this file called file A that I've got just here, what I would do in Windows is I would click on it once, and I could either tap the delete key and hit enter, that would work, or I could right click on it, I could scroll down to delete, and I could tap enter on there, and that would delete it. So I could do it that way. Let's have a look at doing the same thing in the terminal. So to remove a file, very, very simple, use rm and a space, and then you give it the name of the file that you want to delete. So I want to delete file A.txt. If I do an ls, you'll see it's gone. Linux isn't like Windows. It assumes you know what you're doing, and so it'll delete anything without giving it too much thought. So you just got to be aware of that when you delete things to make sure you don't accidentally delete lots and lots of your own work. What I'm going to do, just for a second, while we're still tutorialing away, is I'm actually going to create another copy of file A again now, and I'm going to do that by copying file B. That way I've got my two files again, and I'm going to show you something else that you could do. Linux has this wonderful idea of things called wildcards, and what that does is it allows you to say to the computer, I want you to delete or move or copy any file at all that has a certain pattern of characters in it. So let's give that a go. I'm going to try, for example, I think I've got some files tucked around here. I'm just going to cd into secret. Let's have a look in there. And then we've got more docs in there. Let's try that. There we go. Okay, so in here, what we have is a bunch of different text files. All have got very, very similar names. And again, I'm going to do the same thing in my my Windows directories. So more. There they all are. These are all in here. Okay, so using wildcards, I could, for example, let's have a look for an easy one. Right, I spotted, as I look here, that I've got a few file names which start with ant. You see here, so I've got ant, antagonistic, Antarctica. If I wanted to delete all the files that start ant, like I've got here, I can use wildcards to achieve that. So to do it in Windows, I could say, right, I want to go from here down to here, holding down the Shift key, and then click on there. That highlights all of them, or I could draw a box around them all. That would work as well. And once they're highlighted, I could either right-click and choose Delete, or I could simply tap the Delete key and then hit Enter, to delete them. So that's the Windows equivalent. Let's do that on the command line. So rm, remove, and then I want to delete everything that's got a underscore ant and then anything. So if the file name's got anything after that, so that's what the asterisk represents. Hold down shift, tap 8. So I want to remove anything that's got a underscore ant and then anything else stuck on the end of it. And enter. Let's do another list, see what that did. So you will see that ant, antagonistic, Antarctica, antelope and antler have all disappeared and the other ones are left behind. We can be more clever than that. We can mash wildcards in anywhere. What if, for example, I wanted to delete these two files here, bear and boar? Well, something I've noticed looking at both of them is they both end ar.txt. So I could do something like this. I could say I'd like to remove all the files that have got any number of characters as long as on the end they've got ar.txt on the end of them. So anything that ends with ar.txt, let's look at that. Okay, that worked and that took those ones out. We could do other things as well. I could take, for example, I don't think I've got much left here to work with now actually, but let's look at the hamster and the horse actually. So I could do something like this time. I could say remove a file that's got absolutely anything and then the letters a underscore h in it somewhere and then it's got absolutely anything on it and then ends with .txt. That's a little bit more advanced. And that would remove the files that match that description as well. So that's using wildcards. We're almost finished. The final of the things really that I'd like to look at is the ability to create a new file, because after all, if you were using Microsoft Word or if I were in here myself, I might want to make some more files to store work in. So to do that in Windows, a way that I could do it is I could right click and I could get new and I could make a new text document and I can give it a name, new file, like that, and now I've made a new empty text file that I could put things in and then I could save it. And I've got that saved to come back to another day. So that's how we could do that. Let's do that on the command line. Let's imagine that in the move it secret more docs directory that I've got, I'd like to create a new file in here and call it new file. To do that, we use a command called touch. Very easy to use. Go touch, new file .txt, enter. And if I do a list now, I'll see I've got my brand new file just here, new file .txt, that didn't exist before. So we can do that as well. So using that combination of different skills, what you can now do is attempt the badge tasks. For the first one, all you need to do is to make 3 new files. You've just watched me do that. You need to be able to make a new directory. So we did that previously with make directory, new directory, new thing. Like that, you need to be able to make a new directory. And then what you need to be able to do is to move each of your new files that you're about to create into that directory and then screenshot it to show that you've done it. There's a few other things as well in the goal task, but I'm sure hopefully you'll be able to have a go at those as well. So there we are, making directories, moving files, copying files, removing files, and all in one tutorial.